The market on Level 7 was always crowded at this time of day. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of different worlds pushed through the narrow walkways between the stalls. The air smelled strange, a mix of exotic spices and chemicals that Jake Collins still had not gotten used to after 6 months on the Nexus station. Jake walked slowly through the crowd, his tool bag heavy on his shoulder. His shift in the engineering bay had run long again. All he wanted was to grab some food and get back to his quarters. The constant noise of the station, the alien voices speaking in languages he did not understand, wore him down more than the physical work ever did. He was still getting used to being surrounded by aliens every day. Back on Earth, humanity had only known they were not alone in the universe for 15 years. Jake had grown up dreaming of the stars, but the reality was more difficult than he had imagined. Most aliens ignored humans. Some looked down on them. Humans were the newcomers, the primitives who had barely figured out how to travel between stars. Jake stopped at a food stall run by a friendly Quellan merchant. The creature had 6 arms and blue skin that shimmered under the station lights. Jake pointed at what he wanted, paid with his credit chip, and took the container of something that looked like noodles but tasted like nothing from Earth. As he turned to leave, he heard laughter. Not the good kind. The mean kind that made his back straighten and his eyes narrow. Jake had heard that kind of laughter before back in school, back in the Marines when senior officers thought they could push recruits around. It was the sound of bullies enjoying themselves. He looked toward the sound and saw them. 5 large aliens, reptilian in appearance with dark green scales and yellow eyes. Krovar, his mind supplied. They were security officers on the station, and they acted like they owned the place. Maybe they did. Jake had learned quickly that the Krovar controlled most of the important positions on the Nexus station. They had someone cornered against a stall. Jake moved closer, careful not to draw attention to himself. He could see their victim now. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with skin that looked like it was made of crystal. It caught the light and reflected it in soft colors. Right now, those colors were gray and dark blue. Even without knowing anything about her species, Jake could tell those were not happy colors. The girl was trying to gather packages that had been knocked to the ground. Every time she reached for one of the Krovar would kick it away. The others laughed. The leader, the biggest one with a scar across his snout, said something in a language Jake did not understand. Whatever it was made the others laugh harder. Jake looked around. There were dozens of aliens watching. None of them did anything. They just watched or looked away and kept walking. This was normal here. This was how things worked on the station. Jake told himself to keep walking. This was not his problem. He was new here. Humans did not have any real power in galactic society yet. Getting involved would just cause trouble for him. Maybe for all humans on the station. The smart thing to do was mind his own business. The scarred Krovar grabbed the girl by her arm and shoved her hard against the wall. Her head hit the metal with a sound that made Jake wince. Her crystal skin cracked slightly, and a thin line of glowing liquid leaked from the damage. She made a small sound of pain. Jake found himself moving forward before he made the decision to do so. His feet carried him through the crowd toward the Krovar and their victim. The smart part of his brain screamed at him to stop, but his body did not listen. Some things were just wrong, no matter what planet you were on or who was involved. The scarred leader raised his clawed hand, clearly about to strike the girl. Jake stepped between them. He was not as tall as the Krovar, and he probably weighed half as much. But he stood there anyway. The word came out calm and flat. Stop, just one word. But Jake put every ounce of authority he had learned in the Marines behind it. The tone that said he was not asking. The Krovar froze. All 5 of them stared at Jake like he had just appeared out of thin air. The scarred leader lowered his hand slowly and looked Jake up and down. His yellow eyes showed confusion first, then amusement. The alien said something in common tongue, the universal language that Jake was still learning. The translator in his ear turned it into words he could understand. "What did you say, human?" Jake kept his voice level and his eyes locked on the leader. "I said stop. Leave her alone." The crowd had gone quiet. Jake could feel hundreds of eyes on him. Humans did not do this. Humans kept their heads down and tried not to make waves. That was what he had been told when he first arrived. Do your job, stay out of trouble, and maybe Earth would get a better seat at the galactic table someday. The scarred Krovar stepped closer to Jake. He was easily 2 feet taller and probably 3 times heavier. His scales looked thick and tough like armor. His claws looked sharp enough to tear through metal. He smiled, showing rows of pointed teeth. Do you know who I am, human? I am Drax. I am security here. You are new to this station. You do not understand how things work. Jake did not move. I understand fine. You are picking on someone who cannot fight back. That is how things work in a lot of places. Does not make it right. One of the other Crovar laughed and said something Jake's translator could not quite catch. Drax tilted his head, studying Jake like he was some kind of strange insect. She is Velix. They are nothing. Less than nothing. Why does a human care about Velix? Jake glanced back at the girl. She was staring at him with wide eyes. Her crystal skin had shifted to a purple color shot through with orange streaks. Fear and surprise, Jake guessed. She looked young, maybe early 20s in human years, though he had no idea how Velix aged. He turned back to Drax. Does not matter what she is. You do not get to treat people like garbage just because you are bigger. Drax's smile faded. He took another step forward, close enough that Jake could smell something like sulfur on his breath. The other 4 Crovar spread out slightly, forming a loose circle. Jake recognized the tactic. They were surrounding him, getting ready to attack if their leader gave the word. Jake's heart was pounding, but he kept his breathing steady. He had been in situations like this before. You never showed fear to bullies. The moment you did, you lost. Drax leaned down so his face was level with Jake's. You are very brave, human, or very stupid. We could break you into pieces. All 5 of us against one small human. Who do you think wins that fight? Jake met his eyes and did not blink. Maybe you do, but there are a lot of people watching right now. You are security officers. I am betting Station Command would not be happy if 5 of you beat down one unarmed human engineer for stopping you from hurting a girl. Bad for public relations, it was a gamble. Jake had no idea if Station Command cared about public relations or if they would side with their own security people no matter what. But he said it with confidence, like he knew exactly what he was talking about. Drax stared at him for a long moment. Jake could see the calculations happening behind those yellow eyes. Finally, the Crovar straightened up and took a step back. He said something to his companions in their own language, and they laughed, though it sounded forced now. You are lucky today, human, but you should learn to mind your own business. The Nexus Station is not like your soft Earth. Here, the strong take what they want. The weak survive by knowing their place. Drax looked past Jake at the Velix girl and said something sharp in common tongue. She flinched but did not reply. Then the 5 Crovar turned and walked away, pushing through the crowd like they owned it. Which Jake supposed they sort of did. The noise of the market returned slowly. Aliens went back to their business, though Jake noticed many of them glancing at him as they passed. Some looked curious. Some looked worried. A few looked angry, though Jake was not sure if they were angry at him or at the Crovar. Jake turned to the Velix girl. She was still pressed against the wall, her crystal skin now showing swirls of color Jake could not interpret. He bent down and started gathering her scattered packages. Most of them contained what looked like food or supplies. Here, let me help you with these. She stared at him for a moment, then slowly knelt down to help. Her hand shook slightly as she picked up the packages. Jake handed her the ones he had collected, making sure not to move too quickly or get too close. She seemed terrified, though he could not tell if that was because of what just happened or because he was talking to her. When all the packages were gathered, the girl stood and clutched them to her chest. She was even smaller up close, delicate looking. The crack in her crystal skin had stopped leaking that glowing liquid, but Jake could still see the damage. Are you okay? Do you need to see a doctor? She looked down at the ground and spoke so quietly Jake almost missed it. Thank you. No one ever helps before. Her common tongue was heavily accented, and she struggled with some of the words, but Jake understood her. The sadness in her voice hit him harder than any punch from the Crovar could have. Well, I helped today. My name is Jake Collins. She looked up at him, and her skin shifted to a soft gold color. I am Zara. I work in maintenance. Level 12. Nice to meet you, Zara. Look, those guys might come back. If they give you trouble again, you can find me in Engineering Bay 3. I work there most days. Zara's eyes went wide. You would help again. Why? Velix are nothing to most aliens. Human. 3 days passed after the incident in the market. Jake went to work each morning, did his job, and tried to act like nothing had changed. but he felt eyes on him constantly. Other humans on the station had heard what happened. Some of them congratulated him quietly. Others told him he was crazy and warned him to watch his back. The Crovar who worked on the engineering levels gave him cold stares whenever they passed. Jake kept his head down and did his work, but he stayed alert. He knew trouble was coming. It was just a matter of when. On the fourth day, Jake was alone in a storage room organizing spare parts when two Crovar entered. They were not wearing security uniforms, but Jake recognized them from Drax's gang in the market. They stood in the doorway, blocking his exit. "You made a mistake, human." The taller one said it in common tongue, making sure Jake understood. Drax does not forget. He does not forgive. Jake slowly stood up, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. "Look, I do not want trouble. I just did what I thought was right." The shorter Crovar laughed. "What you thought was right? You humans think you can come to our galaxy and tell us how to behave? You are insects, nothing. You should learn respect." They did not attack, though. They just stood there, letting their presence make the threat clear. Then they left without another word. Jake realized they were playing with him. Psychological warfare, making him nervous. Waiting for him to slip up or be alone in the wrong place at the wrong time. That evening, Jake sat in the common area where humans gathered after shifts. He was eating dinner when Helen Martinez sat down across from him. She was one of Earth's 3 diplomats on the Nexus station. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and graying hair. "I heard about what you did in the market." She said it quietly, leaning forward so others would not hear. "That was either very brave or very foolish." Jake set down his fork. "Probably foolish. But I could not just walk away." Helen nodded. "I understand. But you need to understand something about how things work out here. The Crovar have been in space for thousands of years. They control security on most major stations. They are one of the dominant species in this sector. We humans are 15 years into galactic society. We are nobody. So we should just let them abuse people?" Jake kept his voice low but could not hide his frustration. "That is not who we are. That is not what humans stand for." "I agree with you. But picking a fight with the Crovar puts all of us at risk. If they decide to make humans the target of their anger, it could get very bad very quickly." Helen sighed and rubbed her temples. "I am not saying you were wrong, Jake. I am saying you need to be careful." "What about the girl? Zara, do you know anything about the Valix?" Helen's expression softened. "The Valix are pacifists. Their whole species rejected violence about 5,000 years ago, after nearly destroying themselves in a civil war. When they finally achieved space travel and met other species, they refused to develop weapons or build a military. Most galactic powers see them as useful slaves or easy targets. That is horrible. It is reality. The galaxy runs on power, Jake. Military power, economic power, technological power. Species that cannot defend themselves get walked on. The Valix made a choice to be peaceful. They pay the price for that choice every day." Jake thought about Zara, about her cracked crystal skin and frightened eyes. Somebody should help them. Maybe, but that somebody cannot be us. Not yet. Helen stood to leave. "Just be careful, Jake, and if things get worse, come talk to me. We might be able to arrange a transfer to another station if necessary." After Helen left, Jake finished his meal alone. He did not want to transfer. Running away felt wrong, but he also did not want to cause problems for other humans. He was trapped between doing what was right and doing what was smart, and he was not sure those two things could coexist out here. 2 more days passed. Jake kept expecting the Crover to do something, but nothing happened. The waiting was worse than an actual confrontation. Every shadow made him tense. Every unexpected sound made him reach for tools that could double as weapons. Then, on the 6th day after the market incident, Zara appeared at the entrance to Engineering Bay 3. Jake almost did not recognize her at first. Her crystal skin was a mess of colors, dark purples and sickly greens swirling together. Even someone who knew nothing about Valix could tell she was in distress. He quickly walked over to her. "Zara, what happened?" She tried to speak but started crying instead. Jake looked around. Several human engineers were watching with concern. He gently guided Zara to a small office at the back of the bay where they could have privacy. Once inside, he grabbed a chair for her. "Take your time. Tell me what is going on." It took her several minutes to compose herself enough to talk. When she did, the story came out in broken sentences between sobs. The Crovar had escalated their harassment. They had broken into her quarters and destroyed her belongings. They had told her supervisor lies about her work, getting her written up for mistakes she did not make. They spread rumors that she was stealing, which made other aliens on the maintenance crew refuse to work with her. Worst of all, they had threatened her directly. Drax told her that accidents happen on space stations, that Valix disappears sometimes and nobody asks questions. He told her that helping her was a mistake you made, Jake. He told her that you could not protect her forever. Jake felt anger building in his chest. This was his fault. By standing up to Drax, he had made things worse for Zara. The Krovar were punishing her because they could not directly punish him without causing an incident. I am so sorry, Zara. I tried to help and I just made everything worse. No, Zara looked up at him, and despite the tears, there was something fierce in her eyes. You are the only person who ever tried to help. That means everything to me. But I am scared, Jake. 3 other Velix disappeared from this station in past year. Station security said they probably just left, but we know they did not. We think Drax killed them. The words hit Jake like a punch. Murder. They were talking about murder, and station authorities were covering it up or just did not care enough to investigate. How could that be possible? How could the galaxy work this way? Have you reported this to anyone? Station command? Other security officers? Zara laughed bitterly. Reports go to Krovar security. They throw them away. Nobody cares about Valix complaints. We are nothing. Jake made a decision. Okay, then we do this differently. I have some access to station systems through my engineering clearance. I am going to look into these disappearances, find proof of what is happening, then we take it to someone who cannot ignore it. Who would that be? Zara asked. Who has power over the Krovar? I do not know yet, but there has to be someone. Station command. The trade consortium, somebody. Jake knew he was probably being naive, but he had to try. We gather evidence first. Then we figure out who to show it to. Zara stared at him for a long moment. Why do you care so much? Humans are new. You should not risk yourself for Velix. We are not your people. Jake thought about how to explain. Back on Earth, humans spent a lot of our history treating each other terribly. We had wars and slavery and all kinds of horrible things. But we also had people who stood up and said it was wrong. People who fought to make things better, even when it was dangerous. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the civil rights movement, about people who risked their lives so others could be treated fairly. He paused, searching for the right words. I guess I believe that some things are wrong no matter where you are or what species you belong to. Hurting people who cannot fight back is wrong. Letting it happen when you could stop it is wrong. Maybe that makes me stupid or naive, but I do not know how else to be. Zara's crystal skin shifted to a deep gold color. On Velix homeworld we have a saying. Translated it means, kindness is the strongest force in universe. Most species laugh when we say that. They think we are weak and foolish. But you understand it, Jake. You humans understand. Maybe we do. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. All right, here is what we are going to do. You are going to stay away from isolated areas. Always be around other people. The Krovar will not try anything in front of witnesses. Meanwhile, I will start digging into station records. That night after his shift ended, Jake stayed late in the engineering bay. He logged into the station's maintenance systems using his credentials. He was not supposed to access security records, but he had learned from another engineer that there was a backdoor into the database if you knew where to look. It took him 2 hours, but he finally got in. What he found made his blood run cold. Over the past 2 years, 8 Velix had been reported, missing on Nexus Station 8, and every single report had been filed but marked as resolved with a note that the individuals had likely transferred to other stations or returned home. Jake dug deeper. None of the missing Velix had requested transfers. None had booked passage on ships leaving the station. There was no communication from them after they disappeared. They just vanished, and the investigations, such as they were, lasted less than a day each. Every investigation had been handled by Krovar security officers, most by Drax himself. Jake copied the files to a secure drive. This was evidence. Not proof of murder, but definitely proof of negligence at best and cover-up at worst. It was a start, Darty. Jake arrived at the waste processing sector an hour before Zara's shift was supposed to start. The area was dark and empty, filled with the hum of machinery and the smell of chemicals. Large tanks lined the walls, connected by pipes and conduits. Steam vented periodically from valves, creating clouds of hot vapor that drifted through the space like ghosts. It was the perfect place for something bad to happen. No cameras in this section. Too much interference from the machinery for communication devices to work properly. No other workers this late in the cycle. Completely isolated, Jake found a position behind a large processing tank where he could watch the main entrance. He had brought tools from the engineering bay. A heavy wrench, a plasma cutter, some electrical components he had jury-rigged into something that might work as a weapon if he needed it. They were not much against trained security officers with actual weapons, but they were better than nothing. He waited. Minutes felt like hours. His heart pounded steadily in his chest. His mouth was dry. He had been in combat situations before during his time in the Marines, but this felt different. Back then, he had been part of a unit, had backup, had proper weapons. Here he was alone with improvised tools, waiting to face enemies who wanted him dead. The sound of footsteps echoed through the sector. Jake tensed, gripping his wrench. Then he saw Zara enter through the main door. Her crystal skin was showing nervous colors. Dark blue mixed with gray. She carried a maintenance kit and looked around the empty sector with obvious fear. More footsteps. Heavier. Jake counted 5 figures entering behind Zara. All Krovar. All members of Drax's gang. They spread out immediately, cutting off any escape route. This was definitely not a legitimate work assignment. Zara saw them and froze. Her skin went completely gray. She dropped her maintenance kit and backed away. But there was nowhere to go. The Krovar advanced slowly like predators stalking prey. Drax was in the center of the group. His scarred snout curved into a smile that showed all his teeth. "Hello, little Velix. We have been waiting to have a private conversation with you. No humans to protect you here. No witnesses. Just us, please." Zara's voice shook. "I did nothing wrong. Leave me alone. You did something very wrong. You brought that human into our business." Drax moved closer. "Now we have to send a message. Show everyone what happens when someone makes us look weak." One of the other Krovar laughed. "And show that human what happens to those he tries to protect. When we are done here, we will find him next." Accidents happen on space stations. Jake had heard enough. He stepped out from behind the tank, his wrench resting on his shoulder like it weighed nothing. "Actually, I am already here. Saved you the trouble of finding me." The Krovar spun around, surprised. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Drax started laughing. The sound echoed off the metal walls. "Perfect. This is even better than I hoped. We can take care of both problems at once." Jake walked forward slowly, putting himself between the Krovar and Zara. "Let her go. Your problem is with me, not her." Drax shook his head. "No, human. Our problem is with anyone who challenges Krovar authority. She is part of that problem. You both die tonight. Your bodies go into the waste processor. Station records will show you transferred to another station, just like the others, so you admit it. You killed those other Velix." Jake kept his voice steady. "Good to know I was right. We can admit anything we want. You will not be alive to tell anyone." Drax gestured to his gang. "Spread out. Take him down, but do it slowly. I want him to suffer first." The 5 Krovar began to circle Jake. They were huge, each one twice his size and weight. Their scales looked like armor. Their claws looked like weapons. Any one of them could probably tear him apart. 5 together should have been impossible odds, but Jake had advantages they did not know about. First, he had fought his whole life against people who underestimated him because of his size. Second, he knew this facility. He had studied the layout, the machinery, the hazards. Third, and most importantly, humans had evolved as hunters on a planet where almost everything else was bigger and stronger. Humans learned to win through intelligence, not strength. The first Krovar lunged at Jake with a roar. Jake had been waiting for that. These guys were used to intimidating opponents with size and aggression. They expected people to freeze or run. Jake did neither. He sidestepped the lunge and slammed his hand against a control panel on the wall. A steam vent directly beside the Krovar opened, blasting superheated vapor across the alien scales. The creature screamed. The scales that looked like armor did nothing against steam. The Krovar fell to the ground, clawing at its face, 1 down. 4 to go. 2 more came at him together this time, learning from the first mistake. Jake ran. Not away, but toward a section of machinery with low overhead clearance. The Krovar were too big to move quickly through the confined space. Jake was not. He rolled under a pipe, came up on the other side, and grabbed his plasma cutter from his belt. One of the Crovar forced its way through the machinery after him. Jake activated the plasma cutter and slashed at a hydraulic line above the alien's head. Pressurized fluid sprayed out, hitting the Crovar directly in the eyes. The creature bellowed in pain and stumbled backward, blinded, 2 down. The other Crovar tried to go around the machinery to cut Jake off. Jake saw it coming and kicked over a container of industrial solvent. The liquid spread across the floor. When the Crovar stepped in it, Jake threw a spark from his electrical device. The solvent ignited. Not a huge fire, but enough to make the Crovar jump back with a yelp of surprise. While that one was distracted, Jake circled back toward the main area. He could see Zara pressed against the far wall, her crystal skin shifting through colors rapidly. Fear and hope and confusion all mixed together. The remaining 3 Crovar regrouped, including Drax. They were not laughing anymore. They looked angry and confused. How was this small human taking them apart? Drax barked orders in his own language. The 3 of them spread out more carefully this time, moving to flank Jake from different directions. They were learning. That was bad. Jake's advantages only worked if they kept making mistakes. The Crovar on Jake's left charged. Jake dodged, but it was a feint. The real attack came from his right. Claws raked across his back, tearing through his jacket and cutting into skin. Jake gasped in pain but kept moving. He could not afford to slow down. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and swung it like a baseball bat at the Crovar's knee. The joint bent backward with a crack. The alien went down hard. Jake did not wait. He brought the pipe down on the creature's head once, twice, until it stopped moving. 3 down. 2 to go. Jake was breathing hard now. His back burned where he had been clawed. He could feel blood soaking through his shirt. The adrenaline was starting to wear off and pain was taking its place. But he could not stop. Not yet. Drax and the last gang member attacked together. They were smarter now, more coordinated. Jake found himself driven back toward a wall. His makeshift weapons were scattered across the floor. His electrical device had run out of power. He was down to just his fists and whatever he could grab. The other Crovar grabbed Jake's arm. Its grip was like iron. Jake could feel bones grinding together. He headbutted the alien in the snout as hard as he could. Cartilage crunched. The Crovar let go with a howl. But Drax used the distraction to slam into Jake from the side. Jake crashed into the wall hard enough to knock the wind out of him. He slid to the floor, vision blurring. Drax stood over him, raising his clawed foot to stomp down on Jake's head. At the last second, Jake rolled aside. The clawed foot hit metal floor instead of his skull. Jake kicked out at Drax's other leg, sweeping it out from under him. The huge Crovar fell and Jake was on him immediately. What followed was not pretty or heroic. It was desperate and brutal. 2 beings fighting for survival. Jake had no illusions about honor or fair fighting. He went for every weak spot he could reach. Eyes, throat, joints, anything that would hurt. Drax was stronger, but Jake was more desperate. And Jake had something else: endurance. Humans could keep going long after other species exhausted themselves. It was an evolutionary gift from ancestors who had run prey animals to death across African plains. Minute after minute, they fought. Drax's movements got slower. His breathing got heavier. Jake kept attacking, kept moving, kept fighting, even though every part of his body screamed in pain. He could not afford to stop. The moment he stopped, he died. Zara died. Finally, Drax made a mistake. He swung too wide, overcommitted. Jake ducked under the swing and grabbed a loose piece of rebar from the floor. He brought it up under Drax's jaw with all his remaining strength. The Crovar's head snapped back. His eyes rolled up. He collapsed to the floor and did not get up. Jake stood there swaying on his feet. His vision was blurry. His ears were ringing. Blood dripped from dozens of cuts. The last standing Crovar, the one with the broken nose, looked at Jake. Looked at his 4 fallen companions. Then turned and ran. Jake let him go. He did not have the energy to chase anyone. He barely had the energy to stand. He turned toward Zara. She was still pressed against the wall, staring at him with huge eyes. Her crystal skin was glowing bright gold. "Are you okay?" Jake's voice came out as a croak. Zara nodded slowly. Then she rushed forward and caught Jake as his legs gave out. Jake woke up 3 days later in the medical bay. His body ached everywhere, but the sharp pain had faded to a dull throb. He tried to sit up and found Zara asleep in the chair beside his bed. Her crystal skin was a peaceful blue color, soft and calm. When he moved, she woke immediately. Her face lit up and her skin shifted to happy gold. "You are awake. The doctor said you would be okay, but I was worried. How long have you been here?" Jake's voice was rough from not being used most of the time. "I only left when Helen made me eat and rest." Zara moved closer. "I could not leave you alone. You saved my life." Before Jake could respond, Helen Martinez entered with two other people Jake did not recognize. One was a tall alien with silver skin and multiple eyes. The other was human, a stern-looking man in an official uniform. Helen smiled when she saw Jake was awake. "Good timing. Jake Collins, this is Administrator Zellen from the Trade Consortium and Commander Price from Earth's Embassy. They need to talk to you about what happened." The silver-skinned alien stepped forward. Its voice was strange, like multiple voices speaking at once. "Jake Collins, your actions 3 days ago have created significant complications, but also opportunities. We need to understand exactly what occurred." Jake spent the next hour telling the whole story, from the first encounter in the market to the investigation of the missing Valix to the final confrontation in the waste processing sector. He left nothing out. When he mentioned the data he had found about the 8 missing Valix, Administrator Zelln's multiple eyes narrowed. "This is disturbing. We were not aware of this pattern. Station security reports indicated those individuals simply transferred away. That is what the report said." Jake kept his voice steady. "But none of them actually left. The Crowvar covered it up. Drax admitted as much before the fight started." Commander Price spoke for the first time. "We have that confession on record. The Crowvar who fled talked to save himself. He confirmed multiple murders and a systematic cover-up. This goes beyond just Drax's gang. It suggests institutional corruption in the security system." Administrator Zelln was silent for a moment. Then it said, "The Trade Consortium takes such matters seriously. An investigation team arrived yesterday. They have begun reviewing all security records for the past 5 years. What they are finding is deeply troubling." "What will happen to Drax and his gang?" Zara asked quietly. "They are in custody and will face trial. The charges include multiple counts of murder, abuse of authority, and conspiracy." Administrator Zelln looked at Zara. "The evidence suggests at least 12 Velix were killed over the past 3 years, not just 8. Your species has suffered greatly and justice has been delayed too long." 12. The number hit Jake hard. 12 people murdered, and nobody had cared enough to investigate properly. 12 lives treated as worthless. What about Jake? Helen asked. "The Crowvar government wants him charged with assault. That demand has been withdrawn." Commander Price actually smiled slightly. When the evidence of the planned murder came out, along with witness statements and security footage, the Crowvar government backed down quickly. They are trying to distance themselves from Drax now, claiming he was a rogue element. Convenient. Jake could not keep the bitterness from his voice. They looked the other way for years while their people murdered innocents. Now they pretend they knew nothing. Politics. Administrator Zelln's tone suggested it found the situation distasteful as well. "But the result is that you face no charges, Jake Collins. Indeed, many species representatives are calling you a hero. You have changed the conversation about human involvement in galactic affairs. I did not do it to be a hero. I just could not stand by and watch someone get hurt. That attitude is precisely what has impressed so many." Administrator Zelln gestured with one of its long fingers. "Most species in the galaxy operate on principles of strength and hierarchy. The strong dominate, the weak submit. But humans seem to have different values. You defend those weaker than yourselves. This is unusual, perhaps valuable." After the officials left, Jake slowly got out of bed. His body protested, but he needed to move. Zara helped him walk to the window. Outside, the vast expanse of the station spread out before them. Thousands of beings going about their lives, unaware or uncaring about what had happened in the waste processing sector. "Do you think things will really change?" Zara asked. "Or will they go back to how they were after everyone forgets?" "I do not know, but at least we tried. That has to count for something." Over the next week, Jake recovered enough to return to light duty. But everything was different now. Other humans on the station treated him with respect, mixed with worry. They appreciated what he did, but they also knew he had painted a target on all of them. If things went wrong, the Crowvar might take their anger out on all humans, not just Jake. Aliens treated him differently too. Some gave him a wide berth like he was dangerous. Others nodded respectfully when he passed. A few approached him with their own stories of abuse and injustice, hoping he could help them too. Jake did what he could, but he was just one person. He could not fix everything. The biggest change was with Zara. She had transformed from the frightened girl he met in the market. She still worked in maintenance, but she walked with her head up now. Her crystal skin showed confident colors. Other Velix on the station had started following her example, speaking up when they were mistreated instead of accepting it silently. 2 weeks after the incident, Jake received an official message. He was summoned to a meeting in the station's administrative center. When he arrived, he found Helen, Administrator Zeln, and several other high-ranking officials waiting. Jake Collins. Zeln gestured to a seat. "Please sit. We have a proposal for you." Jake sat warily. What kind of proposal? The investigation into security corruption has revealed systemic problems across multiple stations. Helen leaned forward. The Trade Consortium wants to implement reforms. They are creating a new oversight committee to review security procedures and handle complaints from all species fairly. That sounds good, but what does it have to do with me? We want you to be part of that committee. Administrator Zeln's multiple eyes focused on Jake. Your actions demonstrated integrity and courage, qualities we need in those who will police the police, so to speak. I am just an engineer. I do not know anything about law or administration. You know about right and wrong. That is more valuable than technical knowledge. Helen smiled. Besides, you would not be doing it alone. The committee would have members from multiple species. You would represent human interests and provide a fresh perspective. Jake thought about it. It sounded important, maybe even necessary, but it also sounded like politics, something he had always avoided. I need time to think about it, of course. Take a week to consider. Administrator Zeln stood. But know that your decision matters. What you did has inspired others to speak up about injustice. That momentum could lead to real change, but only if good people are willing to do the work. That evening, Jake and Zara sat together in the same market where they first met. It looked different now. More Velix walked through freely, no longer hiding or keeping their heads down. Other minor species seemed more confident too. Word had spread about what happened. The balance of power on the station had shifted, even if just slightly. What will you do? Zara asked. About the committee position? I do not know. It is not what I came out here for. I just wanted to work on engines and see the stars, but you did more than that. You changed things. Zara's skin glowed warm gold. You gave hope to people who had none. That is worth more than fixing engines, maybe. But I am worried I will mess it up. What if I make things worse? What if you make things better? Zara took his hand. You already did once. Why not try again? Jake looked around the market. He saw aliens of all types mixing together, buying and selling, talking and laughing, living their lives without fear. And he realized that Zara was right. He had already made a difference. Why stop now? The next day, Jake told Administrator Zeln he would accept the position. The announcement was made officially a week later. Jake Collins, human engineer, would serve on the newly formed Security Oversight Committee for the Nexus Station. It was the first time a human had held such a position in the Trade Consortium. The news spread quickly. Some species welcomed it. Others protested. The Krovar government lodged a formal complaint which was ignored. Earth's government was proud but nervous. They sent Jake messages warning him to be careful and not cause more incidents. Jake ignored most of the politics. He focused on the work. The committee began reviewing thousands of complaints that had been dismissed or ignored over the years. They found patterns of abuse against not just Velix but dozens of other species considered weak or unimportant. It was slow, frustrating work. Many of the abusers had retired or transferred. Evidence had been destroyed or never collected properly. Witnesses were afraid to testify, but gradually things began to change. Security officers who abused their power were removed from duty. New protocols were implemented for handling complaints. Independent investigators were brought in for serious cases. Zara also found her path changing. Jake had made an offer she could not refuse. The Human Engineering Division was expanding, and they needed people they could trust. Jake offered Zara a position on his old team. 6 months had passed since the fight in the waste processing sector. Jake stood at the window of his new office, looking out at the Nexus Station's bustling corridors below. So much had changed in that half year. The station itself looked different. More security cameras had been installed. New protocols were posted everywhere. Independent monitors walked the corridors wearing distinctive orange uniforms, but the biggest changes were not physical. They were in how people treated each other. How minor species walked with their heads up instead of hunched in fear. How complaints were actually investigated instead of dismissed. How the old power structures that had seemed unshakable were slowly crumbling. Jake was now the chief engineer for the human division, a promotion that came with the new office and responsibilities he was still learning to handle. His team had grown from 5 humans to 23 people from 8 different species. Zara was his second in command, a position she had earned through talent and dedication. The door chimed. Jake turned to see Zara enter, her crystal skin showing excited patterns of gold and silver. She carried a datapad and was practically bouncing with energy. "You need to see this." She thrust the pad at Jake. "The numbers from the new energy system we designed. Efficiency is up 37%. 37. The station command is amazed." Jake looked at the data and smiled. "That is incredible, Zara. You did most of this work. The crystalline energy transfer was all your idea, our idea. You taught me to think about systems differently, to question assumptions." Zara sat down across from him. "I never would have learned these things in a Velix work gang. They would have kept me cleaning waste processors my whole life. You would have found your way eventually. You are too smart not to, maybe, maybe not." Zara's colors shifted to more thoughtful shades. "That is the thing about this galaxy. Talent does not matter if nobody gives you a chance to show it. You gave me that chance, Jake. You gave all of us that chance." Before Jake could respond, his communication device buzzed. It was Helen Martinez. She wanted to see him immediately. Something in her tone suggested it was important. Jake found Helen in the human diplomatic offices. She was pacing, which she only did when stressed. When she saw Jake, she gestured for him to sit. "I just got word from Earth." Helen sat down heavily. "They want you to come home. Well, not permanently, but for a few months. You have been selected to brief the Galactic Council about the reforms here on the Nexus Station." Jake blinked in surprise. "The Galactic Council? Why me?" "You are the diplomat because you lived it. You are not a politician or bureaucrat. You are a regular person who saw something wrong and fixed it. That makes you more credible than any official could be." Helen leaned forward. "Jake, what happened here is spreading. 7 other stations have implemented similar reforms. The Trade Consortium is considering making them mandatory everywhere, but there is pushback from traditional powers who like things the way they were. So they want me to convince them. They want you to testify about what you witnessed, about the murders and the cover-ups and the corruption, about how one person standing up started a movement that changed an entire station." Helen smiled slightly. "You have become a symbol, Jake, whether you wanted to or not." Jake thought about it. The Galactic Council was the closest thing the galaxy had to a unified government. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. If he could convince them to adopt these reforms universally, it could help countless people. But it also meant stepping even further into the spotlight, becoming even more of a target. "When do they want me to leave?" 2 weeks. You will be gone for 3 months. Maybe longer if things go well." That evening, Jake told Zara about the assignment. They sat in their usual spot in the market, watching the evening crowd. Zara's reaction surprised him. "You should go. You must go." Her skin showed determined colors. "This is bigger than the Nexus Station now. If you can help other stations, other species, you have to try. But I will be leaving you to run the engineering division alone. That is a lot of responsibility. I can handle it. You taught me well." Zara smiled. "Besides, showing the galaxy that a Velix can run an engineering division might be as important as your testimony. Another way to prove that minor species deserve opportunities." Over the next 2 weeks, Jake prepared for the journey. He compiled reports, organized data, and practiced his testimony. Helen coached him on how to address the council and navigate the complex politics of galactic governance. It was overwhelming, but Jake focused on the core message: simple truths about right and wrong, about protecting the vulnerable, about creating systems that served everyone, not just the powerful. The day before he was scheduled to leave, Jake walked through the market one last time. He passed the exact spot where he had first intervened to help Zara. It seemed like a lifetime ago, though it had only been 7 months. A lifetime ago, he was just an engineer trying to avoid trouble. Now he was someone who changed galactic policy. A small Velix child approached him shyly. Her crystal skin showed nervous patterns. "Are you Jake Collins?" The human who helped us? Jake knelt down to her level. I am. What is your name? Lyra. My mother says you are a hero, that you saved Zara and made the station safe for Valix. Her skin shifted to curious orange. Is that true? I helped. But a lot of people made things better. Your people by being brave enough to testify and demand change. Other species who supported the reforms. It was not just me, Lyra thought about that. When I grow up, I want to be an engineer like Zara. She says I can if I work hard, that nobody will stop me because of what I am. She is right. You can be anything you want. Jake felt emotion tightening his throat. The galaxy is changing. Your generation will have opportunities we could not imagine a year ago. Lyra's mother called her away, but the child waved goodbye with her skin glowing happy gold. Jake watched her go and felt the weight of responsibility settling heavier on his shoulders. That little girl's future depended on people like him making the right choices, creating a galaxy where species like the Velix could thrive instead of just survive. The journey to the Galactic Council headquarters took 2 weeks by the fastest ship available. Jake spent the time reviewing his testimony and learning more about the species he would address. The council had representatives from over 200 different worlds, each with their own interests, prejudices, and agendas. Convincing them would not be easy. When Jake arrived at the council station, he was overwhelmed by its scale. The Nexus station could have fit inside it 100 times over. Millions of beings lived and worked here, representing the full diversity of galactic civilization. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Helen met him at the docking bay. She had arrived a week earlier to prepare. Welcome to the center of galactic politics. Try not to get lost. This place makes the Nexus station look like a small town. Over the next week, Jake met with various council members individually. Some were supportive, minor species representatives who had heard about the Nexus station reforms and wanted to implement them on their home worlds. But others were hostile. Dominant species who saw the reforms as an attack on their traditional power structures. The Krovar representative was particularly aggressive. He accused Jake of crimes against Krovar citizens and demanded that humans be sanctioned for interfering in galactic affairs. Jake stayed calm and let the facts speak for themselves. The murders, the cover-ups, the confession. Eventually, even hostile council members had to acknowledge that something had been very wrong on the Nexus station. Finally, the day of the formal testimony arrived. Jake entered the massive council chamber and felt his courage waver for a moment. Thousands of beings filled the room, representing species from across the galaxy. All eyes turned to him as he walked to the testimony platform. He spoke for 2 hours. He told Zara's story. He told the stories of the 12 murdered Velix. He explained the systematic corruption that had allowed it to happen. He described the reforms and how they had improved life for everyone on the Nexus station, not just minor species. But mostly, Jake talked about principles. About the idea that justice should apply to everyone. That power came with responsibility. That a civilization should be judged by how it treated its most vulnerable members, not its most powerful ones. Some council members listened intently. Others looked skeptical. A few openly hostile. But Jake noticed something interesting. The minor species representatives, who made up nearly half the council but rarely spoke up, were paying close attention. Several were taking notes. A few were nodding along with his words. When Jake finished, there was a long moment of silence. Then questions began. For 3 more hours, council members grilled him about every detail. Some were genuinely seeking information. Others were trying to find holes in his story or discredit him. Jake answered every question honestly and directly. The formal vote would not happen for weeks. The council needed time to debate and consider. But Helen told Jake afterward that he had done well. You gave them something to think about. Whether they act on it is up to them now. While waiting for the council's decision, Jake toured other stations in the sector. Word of his testimony had spread. Some stations invited him to speak about the reforms. Others banned him from entering.